Love you, buddy. I guess I better do good. Not easily broken. Man, I tell you what, that was good. I enjoyed it, and they're going to go places, aren't they? And so we can be those folks that say, I remember when they were here and they were just getting started. We helped them, you know what I mean. I tell you what, there's been a lot of people that have planted shade trees for musicians. I mean, when you listen to the choir, all that singing and going on and the instruments and playing the piano, two pianos going at the same time, how do they stay together? Music coming here, there, singing. How many voice lessons? How many piano lessons? How many times did mom and dad have to hear from the living room? Dun, 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 dun. You know, just drive you nuts. I mean, I remember I took piano, and my first day I learned, here we go, up a row to a birthday party. And then they wanted me to play with my left hand, and I said, I'm out of here. Just out of there. But you know what? Because of all those shade tree planters back then, did we have church tonight? Did we have some singing going on? But there were people that had children's choirs, and they had school choirs, and all these kind of things, voice lessons, this and that, piano lessons, instruments. They planted shade trees that they may never have ever sat under, but we got to sit under them tonight, didn't we? And what a joy that was. I love shade tree planters. I love people that plant shade trees and help people in their life. I've had a lot of people plant shade trees for me. You know, Chuck Swindoll says if you ever see a turtle on top of a fence post, you know he didn't get there by himself. And I'm going to tell you what, you and I have had others that have helped us. Every now and then I'll come across someone who thinks they're self-made. They don't realize all the people that planted shade trees for them. And how sad that is that they don't recognize the shade tree planters in their life. There are people that have planted shade trees for you and me. We don't even know their name. Some of them don't know our name. You know, it just perchance when we saw that video just a little bit ago of all those people picking up that car, that guy got on Facebook and said thanks and everything, but not all those people lifting the car up are on Facebook. And they might have gone on and said, well, I hope the boy's all right. I never did get his name. Well, he's underneath there, and he's burning a little bit. He smelled terrible. But we got him up. I ain't doing that again. But one day, God so orchestrates things, all of a sudden one day in heaven, what a day that'll be when that old boy will come up to him and go, hey, you helped pick that car up. Yeah, I remember that. Did you ever get a haircut? He is old school. But they'll rejoice, won't they? Well, I'll be doggone. I mean, God is in the business. You know, as I think about people that planted shade trees for me, as just a Christian humorist, impressionist, I think of Billy Graham. Billy Graham's been a hero of mine a long, long time. Seems like forever and ever. I love to say ever. Dr. Graham turned 97 years old on the 7th. And he's quite a fella. He just finished his last book, he said. He was telling some the other day. I went by there. I was there a week or so before his birthday. His voice is weaker now. And he said, this is my last book. Well, that's what he said on the last 5. He's 97. Hey, Bev Shea was 104. I was with Cliff Bears at the same time last week. Cliff Bears is 92, I think it is. Can't see, but he's there alive and well and still going. Those three are something, aren't they? 104, 97, 92, wow, those three. And think of all the shade trees they've planted. I remember the first time I got to be with Dr. Graham. It was in the year 2000. We were eating supper together. I said, Dr. Graham, I hope you don't mind me imitating you. And he leaned over and he said, you could take over. I just taking over. I thought, this is the big one. I'm taking over. I'm ADD, and ADD people, they take things literally. And my first thought was, I guess I'll have to give Franklin a job. I'll let him do Samaritan's Purse and them little shoe boxes, a Christmas shoe box. You know, my wife loves those shoe boxes. Oh, my, she's into the shoe box thing. And, you know, every year I'm praying what God wants me to do this year for the shoe box. I said, baby, go to Dollar General and just load it up. You know, she says, I'm not loading it up. I'm going to buy the doll I never got. I went, let's just write them a check for $2,000. You know what I mean? Good night. Ladies, I love you, but y'all just, I mean, I'm one of the only speakers that I know of that take y'all on and just deal with you publicly. I love you. We love you. But y'all get on our nerves. I don't know if you know that. Y'all get on our nerves. Y'all think we get on your nerves, but y'all get on our nerves. Y'all been to more women's conferences than all of womanhood and still ain't submitting like you ought to. Look, a lot of these men are going, don't get her stirred up. Don't get her stirred up. Old Grant and Tammy over there, they're not holding hands right now. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm just messing with you. You know I love you. I love my wife, Laurie, my honey love, my sugar babe, my woman. She's a brunette right now. About every 3 weeks, God does a miracle on her hair. She's 4'11", and I'm 6 foot, and I mean, you know, so I'm taller, so I can see the roots when they're coming. I mean, there's times I go, wow. I try to not be real direct, but just say, it's time, honey, it's time. Just bless her little heart. But, you know, but she's a sweetheart. But anyhow, back to old Billy Graham. I just love Billy Graham. He's been a hero a long, long time for me. And I've watched him all over the world on television. And, you know, think of the shade trees he's planted. What he's planted for me. Wherever I go, people want me to do Dr. Billy Graham, do Dr. Billy Graham. And then there's others, of course, that I'll have fun with that have planted shade trees for me. Like we were talking about Andy Griffith's show just a moment ago. Oh, Barney Fife. Has anybody seen Thelma Lee? This body is a lethal weapon. I mean, I love that show. I never met Don Knotts, but he planted a shade tree for me, didn't he? I mean, I've been doing Don Knotts, Barney Fife forever. Oh, nip it in the bud. And just over and over. And then those times when I'll do John Wayne. He's always been a hero to me. Love the Duke, ya-ha-ya, ma-ha-ya. You know, just love. And then I would do Jimmy Stewart, but I don't do Jimmy as much because the young people here, they don't even know who Jimmy is. I tell them if they don't learn to like Jimmy, well, they better get with the program. If y'all want to inherit our money, like who we like, you know. But then I think of other people that have planted shade trees for me just as a Christian humorist, impressionist, and entertainer. My mom and daddy, Floyd Leon and Pauline Bernadine. Man, they have been good to me. They were married 63 years. And my dad's been with the Lord for 3 years, but my little mama, Pauline Bernadine, 86 years old, still going strong in Austin, Texas, at the Independent Living Center, Green Ridge. Got her down there at Green Ridge. And I take her out shopping, get her little Alfred Dunner outfits. And Alfred Dunner, y'all know what I'm talking about? Alfred Dunner at Belk's. Little blouse, little jacket, and the breeches are awesome. They just, woo, woo, they just, woo, woo, they just. I wish Alfred Dunner would make us men some of them things. You know, just that elastic, goes, woo, woo, just. But love my little mama, and she gives me material all the time. This last Christmas, I was telling some folks over in Bristol last night. My little mama, she can mash them taters at Christmas because she's got that hanging down part on her arm. And it's a gift, you know, just a gift. And this last Christmas, she was going at it. And we were farmers, so we wore a lot of talcum powder. We didn't take a bath every night, good night. Take a spit bath, but you powdered up to absorb perspiration. But now I've got Mama in the Independent Living Center. She don't need that much talcum powder, but she still has as much as she ever did. I don't know how to tell her to back off of the talcum powder. Last Christmas, she was going at it, mashing them taters. And talcum powder was poofing out several areas. Just poof, poof, poof. Just like a crop duster. And it landed on our food like powdered donuts. I'm going, oh. And my wife, Lori, she's from a well-to-do family, and she's going, oh my gosh. And my two boys, Chad and Dusty, they're 33 and 30. They're going, ooh, ooh, ooh. Can I tell you something? You cannot taste it. Keeps you regular, but you can't taste it. I mean, my mom and dad, they gave me material. Floyd Leon, after my daddy died, I asked my mom, I said, Mama, what was Daddy like when y'all dated? She said, I would have never asked my mother or father something like that. I said, well, I'm a different generation, Mama. What was Daddy like when y'all dated and everything? I know he's a good man. My daddy was a Sunday school teacher, usher at Hyde Park Baptist Church, Austin, Texas. My daddy was in charge of the tea on Wednesday night supper. That's huge. That's huge. You just don't move into that spot. You work your way up. Be in charge of the tea. I said, Mom, I know he's a good man. My dad, he was in the 36th Infantry Division, T-Patcha, Texas, 21 years. Fast-pitch softball player. Love my daddy. I said, I know he's a good man, Mama. But what was he like when y'all dated? I just want to know. I'm 60 years old. I think I can handle it. And she said, well, whew, your daddy was very aggressive. Mother. Deacon Floyd, well, he wasn't always a deacon, I'll tell you that. Mother. Did he kiss you on the first date? Right on the mouth. Right on the mouth. Took my breath away. I asked him where he learned to kiss like that. He said siphoning gas at Fort Hood. Oh, they gave me material. And if you'll permit me one more story, my little wife, Lori, we give each other material. Tammy, as we just move along in life, we give each other material. We'll be married 37 years in May 19th. Me and my honey love, my little sugar baby, my woman. And we're at a stage now, I don't know, Tammy, y'all might want to pray about this, Grant, but I'm a little older than y'all, you know, but we got us a split king bed. Split king. You know what I'm talking about? It's like two twins together. There's a split. That way when I'm moving, she says I have restless leg. when I'm moving, I don't shake the bed where I wake her up. See, it's a split king. And when I have my CPAP machine on and I'm just shh, 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 shh. Sometimes my hose gets hung up on the bedpost. I'm just, shh, 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 shh. I don't wake her up because see, I'm in my part and it split king. And she's going through a stage. Our air conditioning is on 67, 365 days a year. I mean, one time I was sleeping. I had my mask on. Just shh, shh. I mean, I had it on just perfect. Just shh, shh, shh. And all of a sudden, she just grabbed the sheet and went, and I thought a booger man was in there. And I remember I was going after him, and my hose just yanked me back, just took me back. So I put my mask on my forehead, and I went, "Are you okay? What's the matter?" And she went, "I'm hot." Let me tell you something. Now, if that had happened when they're young, like if we'd only been married 3 years, you know how she'd have handled it? She'd say, "Honey, I'm hot. I'm hot. I'm hot. Hot." But when you've been married 37 years, it's, "I'm hot." I mean, I love her. Tammy, we love y'all, but good night. I said, "Baby, what's it like?" I mean, you can tell I'm pretty verbal. I said, "What's it like? I mean, the heat or what?" She says, "Like a volcano. It's like deep inside you." Just comes out. Oh, good night. Whew. You young girls there on that second row, it's coming, honey. It's coming. I mean, right now you're just sitting there going, one day you're not going to be just going, you're going to go, bless her heart. So we have our air conditioner on 67. We have a fan on the ceiling. And she has a little fan right by the lamp that blows on her head. I said, "You're going to get a sore throat. You're going to get a sore throat." And I'm cold because I'm trying to hold my mask on because I hate for it to leak. If it leaks, she'll wake me up and go, "You're late, Dad." Just holler, And I don't like her hollering at me, so I'm trying to hold my mask on so it won't leak. Shh. But you get older, Grant, when you get 60, your skin gets thinner and it gets cold. And I was free. The other night, I saw crystallization. I saw crystallization on my mask. She's trying to kill me. She's trying to kill me. And sure as the world, if I died, I guarantee you she'll call Tex Kilpatrick, our funeral guy, and she'll say, "Tex, he's gone, but take your time coming over. He'll keep 3 days." But I got to tell you this. I almost forgot this, but really, the Split King is awesome. And by the way, Bed Bath & Beyond, you can get a bridge. It's a foam bridge. It's about this wide, about 2, and you put it on the split. It's a bridge. It's a Split King bridge. I shared this at a church about 6 months ago, and a senior adult guy in the back said, "It's the bridge to nowhere." Buddy, I can tell you and I are bonded. I'm thinking, I mean, tomorrow he's going, "I'm going to Bed Bath, and we're Bed Bath and somewhere beyond." Isn't that funny? Oh, gosh, I've had a lot of people plant shade trees for me. My grandparents planted shade trees for me. They came from Sweden. And my great-grandpa Johnson, my mama's grandpa, my great-grandpa, came in the 1880s, and he bought a piece of land in Texas, and he got it paid for. And then he went to New Iberia, Louisiana, worked the salt mines, very dangerous but good money. Made some money, went to Galveston. Galveston, oh, Galveston. My family, we were raised in Austin, Texas. We'd go to Galveston for our vacations, which was a weekend. The most beautiful brown water you've ever seen in your life. And then he went back to Sweden, and he went to the house for his fiancée, and he walked in there and said, honey, I've got the piece of land, marry me. We'll go back and build the house and live happily ever after. And right there in front of God and everybody, she said, I'm not going. Changed her mind. Can you believe that? It's a true story. Right after she said no, her sister was sitting, and then her sister said, I'll go. It was simpler back then. And she became my great-grandma, Carolina Johnson. And they came over on the boat, and they built the house. 3 weeks ago, I was down there with my mama. We drove out there to see the old home place. Went down the old gravel road right up there to the house. All those shade trees around the house that my great-grandpa planted. When he was 40 years old, he died, took sick and died. And my grandpa was 5 years old. But he planted shade trees he never, ever sat under, but my grandpa did, my mother, Pauline Bernadine, did. I have, my boys have. You get the picture. You've had people plant shade trees for you in your life. My favorite shade tree planter is old Jeremiah. In chapter 32, I brought my Bible. I know how some of y'all people are. You're going, well, did he even bring a Bible? I've got one right here. I know how some of y'all are. And did he bring a Bible? Jeremiah chapter 32 is one of my all-time favorite. It was a bad time. It was a tough time. The Babylonians were moving in, taking over. God's people hadn't listened to Jeremiah. He'd preached for 40 plus years, and yet no one came forward. No one made a decision.
Can you imagine if Billy Graham had preached over 40 years and no one ever came forward?
Can you imagine that? Jeremiah was faithful in season and out of season. They called him the weeping prophet. And I know he wept because no one came forward. He was there in the palace, the king's palace, and yet he was in the prison in the king's palace. That sounds sort of odd. I was taking a tour of the AT&T football stadium, Jerry Jones, a little football stadium down in Arlington. They have a jail in the bottom that holds 32 people. That seemed odd to me. But they said, well, people get out of hand and we put them in jail. We can hold 32. Isn't that something? I mean, a jail. Well, he was in a jail in the palace. It was tough. They didn't know what to do with him or without him. I mean, we preachers, we are peculiar. Ezekiel 3 says, God has given us a forehead that's harder than their forehead because we deal with a hard-headed people. I like that old country preacher that said, I'm sick and tired of their nickel and dime problems, wanting silver dollar solutions. But you know, that's just the way it is. We are peculiar. They don't know what to do with us or without us. And we're a little strange. And our wives even know it, but they love us through Jesus. And sometimes it's a little lonesome out there, isn't it? When you're called, you're called. When the call of God's on your life, it's on your life. I'm one of those that believes when your call is irrevocable. I'm called. If I'm doing landscaping, I'm called. If I do air conditioning work someday, I'm called. I'm a minister. I'm going to touch lives for Christ. If I have to do like the Apostle Paul and make some tents to make some money to serve and touch people and bless my family, I'll do that. But when you're called, you're called. You're a shade tree planter. Don't ever forget it. And all of a sudden, in the midst of the worst of times, God spoke to him and said, Jeremiah, your cousin Hanamel is going to come and he's going to want to sell you a piece of property there at Anathoth. Anathoth was his hometown, 3 miles from Jerusalem. He wants to sell you the old home place, the hometown. I want you to buy it. Now he's going to take the money and go put it in a Swiss bank account and get out while the getting's good, but I want you to buy it because I have a kingdom purpose for it. And I want you to pay 17 shekels of silver for it. I want you to pay top dollar. You could get it 10 cents on a dollar in these worst of times, but I want you to pay top dollar. I want everyone to know this is my land. I want you to buy it. I want you to record it in front of people. I want you to sign the documents. I want there to be a crowd there. I want you to have one document signed and put in an earthen jar and sealed because it needs to last a long time. Then I want you to sign an open copy so all those Baptists that just ain't going to believe it unless they see it can come and look at it as often as they want to. Yeah, there it is, right there. Or that fella, that man. I'll tell you one thing. Right there, he signed it. I saw it. He said, because houses and fields and vineyards will again be planted in this land. One day my people will return. And when they return, they will have a place to live. You know your history. They were in bondage in Babylon for 70 years. Finally, here come the Persians. The Persians were a warring people. They were not an occupying kind of people. So Cyrus, when he saw the witness of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, he said, if y'all want to go home, go home. And they went home. I'm going to tell you something. There's no place like home. I live in Monroe, Louisiana, West Monroe, Louisiana, with the Duck Dynasty boys. I knew them when they were just ducks. And that's home for me. But when I go to Austin and I go to the cemetery and I go out to New Sweden where our Swedes gather together to those 2 home farms and go out there and see the shade trees that my grandpa's planted, my great-grandpa planted, and I walk around the place and just reminisce. That will always be home to me, won't it? Now, I'll probably live and die in Louisiana. These things happen. But I'll always... Home is Austin and east of Austin in the country. No place like home is there. And when they got home and they opened up that jar and saw his signature, saw his ring signet that had been pressed into that wax, it was theirs. And that was awesome. 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 Jeremiah planted a shade tree he never, ever sat under. Now, real quick, what does it take to plant some shade trees? For you as a minister, for you as a lay person, as a servant, as a shepherd, what does it take for you to keep on planting shade trees? Because sometimes it's a little lonely. Sometimes it's a little bit hard. I was a pastor for 24 years, and in 1995 I left the pastorate to do what I'm doing now, free at last, free at last. Thank God I'm free at last. I don't go to business meetings anymore. But you're my heroes. Pastors, ministers, y'all are my heroes. I leave tomorrow morning. Y'all have to go back to the sheep. And sometimes they're nasty. They get wet, they really smell. They get bogged down in the mud and their wool can get knots in it. But God's called you to love them and to be their shepherd. And the shepherd knows his sheep, and the sheep know their shepherd. We need to work harder at knowing our people and loving our people, warts and all. Some of them you just gotta love them like you do that uncle that's an idiot. Sometimes you gotta love that old gal just like your aunt or your mother-in-law who has a language you know not of. Just love her. And don't take every criticism personal. I look back years ago, I took it so personal. Everything, if it was constructive criticism, I took it personally. Personally. Listen, they're going to tell you something, then they're going to Shoney's and eating that corn chowder. They're not even thinking about you anymore. Don't take it personal. Now, there's a few that are out to get you. There are some mean people, granted, and they're everywhere. But most of the time, it's just constructive criticism. Relax a little bit. But to plant shade trees, it takes your sensitivity. Jeremiah was sensitive to hear from God. He heard God speak to him. Jeremiah, I want you to plant. I want you to buy the field at Anathoth. He heard him. We have to be sensitive. We have to hear him. We have to hear God. Do you hear him? He's self-revelatory. He reveals himself. He doesn't play hide and seek. But are we listening? Are we seeking? Are we asking? Are we knocking? Do we really want to know what he wants us to do? Oh, he wants to share it with us. I remember it was 7 years ago, I guess, 2008. The stock market just, as Ross Perot say, it was the biggest sucking sound I've ever heard. Went down to almost 5,000. I was in Boca Raton at the Boca Raton Resort doing a thing for Wycliffe Associates. I was supposed to help them raise money that night, and everything went down to like 5,000. And all of a sudden, these people that give out of the dividends of their money, and all of a sudden, it's like, And I had to talk about shade trees that night. And people are wondering what's going on. I called my financial guy, Pat Williams. I said, Pat, what's going on? He said, preacher, always remember, two most important things are food and shelter. I said, I expect my preacher to say that, but I want a little more from my financial planner. Our church backed away from building. Other churches backed off. We'll wait this thing out. We'll wait this thing out. I was planning to come to speak here at Liberty for my buddy. They were going to try to raise some money. And I said, Grant, are y'all still going to go through with this thing, or do I need to come, or do I not need to come? He said, oh, no, you need to come on. We're going to go forward. I went, are you serious? And so I came on up. And I remember that night, Tammy, remember we went out to eat. I don't know if we were at the Red Bird, Robin, Blue Bird, whatever. And I was getting me a burger. I've never preached on gluttony. And those got them onion rings on a stack pole. Just, every time I smell it, every fat cell in my body does a hallelujah chorus. I just start. And so I met him there, and I'm sitting there, I'm wolfing down a burger, eating some onion rings, and Pastor, he started sitting there drinking a Coke, and I looked at him and I said, man, you okay, man? His collar was pretty loose, and he lost a lot of his little jowls and lost some weight. I said, well, you all right? He said, oh, yeah, I'm fine. And finally, I said, well, eat something. He said, I'm not hungry. I said, I'll eat something. Get some carbs for Christ. And finally, Grant said, Swan, I'm fasting. All right, good night. How long have you? He said, it's going to be 40 days tomorrow. He said, but God wants us to go forward. I've heard God tell me, let's go forward. And I preached shade trees. And when they turned their pledges in, $12.5 million. Praise the Lord. And a lot of those people that planted those shade trees back then aren't here today. They planted shade trees. They never sat in. They never got to see this facility. They never got to see other campuses. They never got to see all these other things that are going on, but they planted shade trees. And I'm going to tell you, one day when we're in heaven and Jesus calls on Paul Harvey, and Paul Harvey at the big banquet says, and now the rest of the story. Page 2. they will hear about it and know about it. And forever. It takes your sensitivity. He'll tell you. It takes your surrender. You got to surrender to plant a shade tree. It takes your silver, takes your money. You know I was going to go there. But it does. It takes your tithes. It takes your offerings, your gifts. Shade trees can be expensive. I pray that you're a giver. I pray that you're a tither. I pray that you have the kingdom work in your will. That when you die, that it's going to kingdom work. Listen, your kids don't need all your money. You know what they're going to do with it? Spend it. I've told my boys, if you're godly and over a period of time, since you're a good steward, I'll give you more to be responsible for. But if not, you get a truck. And that's it. I know the enabling thing. I've been down the road of enabling. And I don't need to be enabling when I die. I need to make sure that the kingdom always has priority with my silver, with my time, my talents, my treasure. It takes your sight. Can you see it? Do you have a dream? Houses and fields and vineyards. Do you have a dream for your church? Do you have a dream for your kids? Do you have a vision that's for your family, for your grandkids? Do you have a vision for your community? Can you see it? Houses and fields and vineyards and shade trees, if you will. What shade tree is God wanting you to plant? Or shade trees? Last of all, it takes your signature. He had to sign on the dotted line, didn't he? You know, a lot of times we have great intentions. Oh, yeah, this is what I think I'm going to do. Honey, what about if we do this? I think we might do this. We ought to do this. Why don't we help this one here? Why don't we do this one for that one? Or that? Well, and then all of a sudden we get distracted and we never do it. We had good intentions. But when you take that pen and you sign your name, when you buy that house, I made Laurie sign it too. If we're both going to jail if we can't pay for that thing. When you get your driver's license, when you turn in your income tax, what do they want? Your signature. What is your signature? Your signature is your character. It's your integrity. That, Lord, as best I can with the core being that you've placed within me, I'm going to plant the shade tree you want me to plant. Steve Green would sing that old song, may all those that come behind us find us what? Faithful. Not everyone can be a legend, but everyone can leave a legacy. When Yogi Berra died several weeks ago, I love old Yogi. He was a New York Yankee. He's a legend. And when he died, the first thing I thought about was that one of his yogiisms. If you don't go to their funeral, they won't come to yours. It'll hit you in a little bit. He was a legend. Not everybody can be Yogi Berra, but everyone can leave a legacy. Everyone. I'm going to tell you a story as I close tonight. And I want to challenge you. But let me say this before. I have out there my shade tree book. I finally put it in a book. And I hope you'll get it. At the back of the book, there's 6 lessons that you can take your Sunday school groups through. And preachers, you preach it. Take it. It's yours. Preach it. And I'm telling you, there's shade tree stories in there. For instance, the trees at the Muir Woods out there at Golden Gate Bridge. They're over 1,000 years old. How in the world have they lasted 1,000 years? Their roots shake hands with each other. They hold each other up. How do we make it? How do you make it here in this part of the country? In such a worldly place. So many people changing. Our world's changing in so many ways because you lock arms together. You let your roots shake hands together. After we have this service, we're going to have a fellowship time, and your tendency is going to be to, well, let's go get in the car and let's go on. I want you to stay. We're going to have some refreshments. I want you to mix and mingle and fellowship, get to know each other a little bit. Let your roots shake hands with each other. Come together because literally we can hold each other up. We're going to need each other. We're a band of brothers. We're a band of brothers and sisters that we need each other. I want to tell you this story. When I was in high school, I was on Plan 2. Plan 2 was non-college bound. Okay? I'm admitting it. I took the ACT just to take it. I was an athlete, and I took the ACT, and I made a 16 on it. But that didn't bother me. I got a football scholarship to Lamar University in Beaumont, Texas. I went down there for a week, didn't like it, went back to Austin, Texas, pulled in the driveway, and my dad comes out to the car and hugs me. He said, well, we were called down there to tell you to come home if you weren't happy. They said you'd done gone. I said, well, I'm here. I was going to go into the moving and hauling business. My dad and I, we did moving and hauling. We were like two men in a truck. And I was going to take that and I was going to grow that business. My dad was a printer, but we did moving and hauling when he got off work. I said, I'm just going to take that and I'm going to grow a business, moving people. I'm going to give Beacons and Allied and Mayflower a headache in Austin, Texas. But when I got there, my high school football chaplain, Marshall Edwards, had contacted my dad and said, Mr. Swanberg, Dennis needs to go to college. No Swanberg boy had ever gone to college in my family. And my dad said, well, I don't know about that now. He said, he needs to go, Mr. Swanberg. Marshall Edwards was 32 years old, a young Baptist preacher. He was our high school football chaplain. We called him Rabbi. I went and saw the movie Woodlawn this last week. And when I watched that, I saw my experience in 1971 when I came to Christ as a junior in high school, when Marshall and I, we started winning our football buddies to Jesus. We started an FCA, and then we had a one-way revival in the football stadium with just student-led. We did it ourselves. Our parents didn't say, y'all need to go. We were telling our parents that they needed to come. And they were almost looking at us like, now don't go, you're getting a little overboard. It was the Jesus revolution. But it was real for me and real for many others. Rabbi was there in the midst of it with us. And he took me and my dad in his yellow LTD to Baylor University on Friday. School was starting Tuesday. We were working people. We weren't white collar. We weren't blue collar. We were more ring around the collar. We got up there. And by the end of the day, I was enrolled at Baylor University to play baseball for Coach Dutch Schrader. He's 91, still going. I saw him a while back. He said, Swan, you still can't hit a curveball. I went. When I got up there, they said, you're going to have to take the ACT again. I went, Baylor, little Harvard on the Brazos. So I took it again right there. I took it again, made another 16. But you know what? You put them together, 32. We got in the car and we came home. I got all my stuff together. Next day I go up to Baylor. My life was changed. I was on probation, but I didn't know it. I had to take remedial English. A year going through a little grammar book, Harbrace Hodge, or Hodge and Harbrace or something. A year. I'm going to tell you something. You can learn. I then majored in Greek, and I majored in religion. I got a double major. Then I went to Southwestern Seminary, got a master's, and I got a doctorate. La-di-da, la-di-da, la-di-da. And God's been good to me. Marshall Edwards, a 32-year-old preacher, wasn't even my preacher. I was a Methodist at the time. Stepped into my world, planted a shade tree for me, didn't he? Didn't he? Later on in November, he came up there and was the pastor at Columbus Avenue Baptist Church in Waco, Texas. I didn't know how Baptists would steal preachers. I didn't know that was all going on when he took me up there. I look back on it now and I realize now why they let me in. And you know why. They wanted to get Marshall to come to Columbus Avenue Baptist Church. So when he brought me up there, they let me in because they were trying to get Marshall. I want you to know something. That doesn't bother me. I'm thankful that God would use even that to get me there because it changed my world. That spring, I became his youth pastor. I gave up baseball to be his youth pastor. He had done so much for me. My life's been changed. He lives in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. He's had bad heart attacks. His health's not good. I love Rabbi. Grant has a preacher friend down in Valdosta, Wayne Robertson. Pastors a church about 400. He poured his life into Grant. This church on Sundays reaches 5,000 people every Sunday. Wayne Robertson planted a shade tree that he's only sat under a couple of times coming up here, hadn't he? Hadn't he? Now here's the rest of the story. When Marshall Edwards was in high school, he was at Newton County High School in Covington, Georgia. He had an appointment to West Point, and he had a scholarship, full scholarship to Harvard. Turned both of them down to go to Baylor University to prepare for gospel ministry. His dad said, if you do that, I won't give you one penny. And his dad never did, not one penny. He wrote him letters and ridiculed him, and it was hard for me to even now to hear that Marshall didn't have a good relationship with his father. His father was a demented man in some ways, and his father was in the textile business and traveled overseas and was just a hard man. And matter of fact, in 1967, he killed himself in a hotel room in Birmingham, Alabama, all alone. I asked Marshall the other day, I said, Marshall, have you ever gotten over it? He said, no. No, I hadn't gotten over it. And that hurts me because I was so close to my daddy. Well, when Marshall was in high school, he had an English teacher named Mary Leila Ellington. He had her for one semester. Now, when he went to Baylor that first semester, he had 3 jobs, but he came up short on money. But someone sent in a check. Next semester, someone sent in a check, paid the balance. The next semester, paid the balance. Next semester, paid the balance, till he graduated. And you already know who that is, don't you? His high school English teacher, Mary Leila Ellington. Never married. Marshall asked her one time, Miss Ellington, did you ever have a romance? Did you ever have a boyfriend? And she said, Marshall, I've never had a date, but you're my adopted son, and you're the greatest investment I've ever made in my life. Right before he took me to Baylor was when he found out. About a few weeks before he took me to Baylor, he got a letter. And it was from Miss Ellington. She said, Marshall, I was never going to tell you this, but I was in my attic. I came across the canceled checks to Baylor. God told me to tell you, I am the one that wrote the checks to Baylor. She never made over $5,000 a year. She said, but you're the greatest investment I've ever made. He got on the phone. He called her. She said hello. He couldn't speak, and he talks more than I do. And finally, there's a long pause, and she said, is this Marshall Edwards? And he said, yes, ma'am. And again, she said, you're the greatest investment I've ever made in my life. What a lady. But here's the other rest of the story. When I got in that yellow LTD with Marshall Edwards driving and my dad in the front seat, I thought I was in the back seat by myself, didn't I? Who was back there with me? Mary Leila Ellington. When we got to Baylor and they made me take the ACT again, she was there. I imagine if she could have spoken out, she would have said, if I'd have had him for one semester, he'd have made a 22. She was there when I graduated. She was there when I went to seminary and when I finished seminary, and she was there when I got married to my little honey love, and she was there when my boys were born, and she was there when I got my 2 television shows, and she's been, matter of fact, she's sitting somewhere out here, isn't she? She planted a shade tree she never, ever sat under, but I have sat under that shade tree. I tell you that story, pastor, preacher, teacher, staff member, wife, spouse, servant, giver, you're making a difference. God's a shade tree planter. He planted a shade tree for Zacchaeus just so he could see a friendly face. He planted a shade tree for Nathaniel just so he could sit under it and do some thinking. He planted a mustard tree so Grant and I would have a good sermon illustration. And he planted a shade tree on a hill called Calvary. And he planted a shade tree by the river of life for all of his shade tree planters to enjoy for eternity. I'll be leaving in the morning, flying to Portland, Maine to encourage New England pastors and their wives for 3 days just to love on them and encourage them and build them up and just love on them and speak truth to them. I may or may not ever see you again on this earth, but I can promise you one thing, in Christ Jesus, I will see you underneath that shade tree. And we will rejoice in what God has done in and through you and me and all of his kids as shade tree planters. Next time you write your tithe, next time you write that gift above and beyond the tithe, next time you give of your time and your talent, next time, you think of it, I'm planting a shade tree here, and I'm planting a shade tree there, and I'm planting another tree here. You know about it. This is old. As I was driving down 64, everything is historic. You have to have a permit from God to do anything. This happened here and this happened here. And then you can see this old plantation with these oaks and the trees are arching. And it's beautiful to walk through and see the plantation. But I'm going to tell you something. There was a great grandpa that planted those shade trees that never, ever saw them arch with Spanish moss. But they planted shade trees that they may never sit under because they wanted you to sit under them. Revelation 14:13 says, blessed are they that die in the Lord, for their works follow after them, good or bad. May we plant shade trees and may God be honored. I'm honored to be with you. Come by my product table. Take me home with you. I've even got a book out there, and I'm going to give one last little testimony on that book. In 2009, I did this little book called Man Code. Men Need Buddies. Preachers, invest your life in your men. If I ever pastor again, I'm going to give 90% of my time to men. It's a book, most men don't have 3 best friends that can keep their mouth shut. Ladies, let your man be with men. It takes some time to make friends with buddies. Men, take some time to start a plant, to bond. Let them be with men. Because one day, you're going to need at least 6 to carry the dude out. So what are you going to do? Get the steel magnolias to haul him out, It's a good little book. A good study for men. Take this and put some meat on its bones. and be close to your men. You don't need to be anybody's boy, but you need to be somebody's man. You need your men, and they need best friends. And why don't you be a best friend to them? Well, anyhow, all that other stuff's out there. Thank you. I love you. Keep planting those shade trees.